Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is the July reading wrap up for 2025. I finished a total of 7 books, I believe. Yes, I'm not talking shit, in the month of July, which makes it one of my most successful reading months this year so far. So we love that. For me, that being said, I had already started 3 of these by the time that July started. So we're going to run through the books that I read. A bit of a different month. I read 2 historical fictions and 2 horror books, and also a non-fiction book outside of my regular sci-fi fantasy realm. But sometimes you just got to do it, right? Just got to go where the mood takes you. I also think this was my most mood reading month yet to date, which is interesting because I would say years ago I wasn't a mood reader. I've never really gravitated towards mood reading, but recently that is what I've been doing. So yeah, interesting. I did hit 3 of these things that I said I was going to read only because I'd started them before the month started, and basically everything else I just picked up on a whim. So we're going to start with the one that I nearly finished by the time July rolled around. I just finished it in July, and this is Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. That's not going to focus on that. This is following the story of Mary following the death of her mother, who puts word out to her aunt Patience, who resides in Jamaica Inn with her aunt Patience and also her uncle Joss Marilyn, if I'm remembering that correctly. It's been a minute. And she ships off to Jamaica Inn and realizes very quickly that there is something more sinister happening behind the scenes here. Now, in terms of the historical fiction, don't quote me on the actual history because I'm not really sure the accuracy of my memory here, but it was around the time where there was some pirating happening on the shore, and then people would go and like um, pirate these boats, take their stock, and then go and make money off the particular items that they were able to take from whoever was coming into shore. And the uncle, it was suspected, was doing some of that dodgy thing. So basically, when Mary gets there, she's told to stay in her room, especially at night, not come out, not question anything that her uncle is doing. And it becomes very apparent very quickly that some dodgy goings on is happening here. And we follow Mary for the most part of this story as she navigates what she can do in these sort of circumstances without having a lot of power to her name. So it was an interesting read, very poetic prose. I think this one, if I'm remembering correctly, was 18 something. No, 19. First published in 1936. I got my centuries mixed up. So 1936, very beautiful prose. I mean, dated product of its time. I think we need to take that with a grain of salt. But definitely not my last du Maurier. I had a good time with it, and I will be continuing on with the du Maurier journey. I think her prose and her questioning of some of the gender norms and societal norms in these books was interesting, even if I didn't love the way that women were treated, and that's just because I'm a product of my time, which is much more modern. The next thing that I picked up was a memoir by Leisha Haley and Kate Mowaning. Hopefully I pronounced Kate's surname correctly. This is So Gay For You, Friendship, Found Family, and the Show That Started It All. I grew up starting my gender journey with I guess, sexuality journey when I was in my late teens, early 20s with the L Word, which both of these ladies were part of. They were part of the original cast and also the remake of Generation Q, which happened a few years ago. And I picked this up on a whim. These were 2 of my, well, Leisha Haley, who plays Alice, was my favorite character in the show. And even though I didn't quite identify with the women on this show, it was a big part of my life and a big part of my identity. So I picked this up. This released earlier this year, and I had a great time with it. It really does delve into a lot of the goings on behind the scenes of that particular show, and follows them through their careers as they started when they were in their, I think in Moanings was in her mid-20s, early to mid-20s, and Leisha Haley was coming into late 20s, early 30s, and then they've grown up as very good friends together and sort of talking about the decades that they've been friends and the impact that that show has had. So that was a lot of fun. It's read by the authors, which I always appreciate with a memoir, so I had a good time. The next one I picked up was the first horror, and that is going to be Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grey Hendricks. This one is following Fern as she is sent to a home for young girls who become pregnant, and they are sent to this home to prepare, then give birth, and then their children are given up for adoption, which was something which I believe was outlawed, if I'm remembering the dates correctly, in 1973. So Fern sent to this one. She's basically been tossed aside by her family, saying, you're going to go and have this baby, give this baby away, and then you're welcome home again. But until that point, we don't want anything to do with you. And we follow a group of girls who are in a similar boat, and their ages are quite varying here. Horrific backstories for some of the girls here. Do check your trigger warnings for some of this. But what they do is they decide they want to take some of their power back, and they are given that opportunity when a library van comes into the compound, and Fern is handed a book of witchcraft to go ahead and play around with, and then some sinister happenings go on from there. There is a couple of moments in this book where the body horror is certainly up there. I won't give too much away here, but like I said, check your trigger warnings. This was fairly enjoyable for me. It's not going to be my last Grady Hendrix that I pick up for sure. I didn't love it. I'm probably sitting around a 3.5 for the book. The writing style was, in my opinion, simplistic, but it was entertaining, and I'll give it that. So for that reason, I will give Grady Hendrix another go. I was very entertained throughout the duration of the story, and I really appreciated the notes that he put in his afterword just to give a bit of context as to why he was tackling this particular subject matter. So I had a good time with it. I don't know that I'm going to read it again, but for what it was, entertaining, and I'll pick up another one by this author. Moving on from there, we have a book called Kia's Fury. This is by Stepan Kobets. This is book 2 in the Godina Codex. I read this one for review. The author's been asking me for a little while. I read Godina, and I had an okay time with this one as well, probably sitting around a 3-star. In the first book, we follow a group of characters who are sent to the planet Godina for a rescue mission of a character who is the central focus, I would argue, of book 2. In book 2, we go back to the planet Godina for excavation purposes, and we discover some beings who have been left there for 2,000 years. We also, on the other end of that, are dealing with the Altanum Empire, who are staging a war to basically have the entirety of the galaxy to themselves. There's quite a lot of military aspects to it too. I will say that Stepan has done quite a good job at keeping the characters having distinct voices, because there was a lot of characters introduced in this particular part. We're following some of the inmates that we had in the first book. They branch off to do different things and have different alliances in the second book, and trying to keep all of that together could be quite difficult with just the sheer amount of people that we're dealing with here. Stepan's writing style is quite literal. It is a translated work, nothing against that at all, but if you're going to go into the Godina complex, just go in knowing that, and you'll have a much more enjoyable time. I enjoyed this one. There was a moment at the end that I thought was a really good cliffhanger and sets it up quite nicely for book 3, which I believe the author is working on now. Next one I picked up was another horror, and this is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, and this is following Jessica and a young boy nicknamed Kiddo as they go on some unexpected adventures together. We open up with Jessica, we open up the boy, who is, we're told, is running from his father. It becomes quite apparent this boy has been very restricted in what he can and can't see, and he's about 5 years old. He's running from his father, he's clutching a book to his chest, and he just wants to go outside and see some of the things that he's seeing in this book. So we're sort of led to believe very early on that this child is so repressed that he's not allowed to see the outside world, and we get a real sense of fear from the father character. We also have an adult character, Jess, who's in her early 30s, who is sort of down on her luck, just working at a diner, and she has a chance encounter with this child. What ensues from there is this young woman trying to look after this young child, get him away from things that he thinks are scary, and it really does unpack this idea of fear. What I liked about this one is it's quirky, it's well written, and if I'm putting those two horror books that I read this month up against each other, I would say the writing style of Cassidy is much more mature, in my opinion, than Grady Hendrix, and I probably had a better time with this one, giving it a 4-star. What I liked about this one is that this child is so scared of things, and we get this real sense of panic and anxiety around this child having fear triggers throughout his life that he's not been exposed to before. And I liked the coupling of the gentleness of Jess, who doesn't have children, doesn't want children, but is very obviously trying to protect this young boy and think about things from his point of view, all the while getting more and more scared herself. Now, for the plot twist at the end, I did see this one coming, but I still had a pretty good time with it, and I'm looking forward to more Nat Cassidy. Again, I really appreciated the afterword in this book, talking about some of the influences that he had before going into writing it. Next up, we have another mood read. This one just came out of nowhere. I've been interested in this author's works for a little while, and this book happened to be available through my library on audio, and that is Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. This is my book of the month. I will be doing a review or discussion around this book, which I'm hoping to do for my book of the month, just moving forward, getting a little bit back into that review space. I had a wonderful time with this one. I gave it a 4-star, probably bordering on 4.5 as well. But for this one, we are following Tan Yuxin, who is a historical figure from the Ming Dynasty, who was quite pivotal in medicine for women. In that time, she was a physician for women. Now, I didn't know that going into this book. This book actually made me go and have a look at the character that it was based off, which I think is just some of the magic that historical fiction, or putting fiction into anything, can do. It's made me want to go and have a look and learn about that person. So we are following Lady Tan, who grows up. We follow her from childhood through to adulthood. She comes from an elite family. She's very privileged. And alongside of that, we also follow her friend, who is the daughter of a midwife, Ming Li, who then becomes a midwife herself. I loved the coupling of culture, exploring boundaries, and just the lifelong learning that Lady Tan carries from the beginning of this book right into the end. And we still see some of these things in practice today. Lady Tan, or Tan Yuxin, the real person, has influenced modern medicine over 500 years ago. So this book is set in 15th century China. They are dealing with an incredibly patriarchal and traditionalist society, and I thought it was just magical. And I will have a full review, or full discussion, I guess, on this one in a couple of days' time. And the last one that I read, and probably the one I'm most conflicted about, is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. I wanted to adore this one. I know a lot of people that I trust really adored it and loved it. I think this is very good, but I also found myself really nitpicking at some of the aspects of this book. So the prose is fantastic. Jen Williams' world building is second to none. You can fall into it, you can see it. It is easy to follow along with. One of the characters in here, Vincenza, and I butcher that pronunciation, one of my favorite characters that I've read this year thus far. And there are a few things in here that just, I guess, didn't grip me as much as it might have gripped others. Some of the gripes that I had personally with this one is just repetition of phrasing between races. We hear that Vintage is eccentric about 1 billion times, and we also hear that to describe other characters as well, which I didn't love. There is a enemy to lovers aspect in this one that I also didn't think was I thought it could be executed a lot better than it was. To grip me, I was sort of like, okay, well, I see where you're going, but also, okay. There was a character in here which the build-up was quite well done, and I was really rooting for the payoff of what was going to happen to this character, and then it just sort of fell by the wayside very quickly. So there are a few things in here which didn't grip me as much as it has gripped others, but I can certainly see for, world building people like myself, like that aspect of this story is just fantastic. So we are following 3 characters in this one. We're following Tor, who is an Aboran, who is sort of like, I read them as sort of elven, but a take on vampires as well. So they use human blood to sustain themselves, but not too much, because then they can get something called the Crimson Flux, which is a disease which has ripped through these people. We have Fel Noon, who is a Fel Witch, who has Winnow Fire, which is something that people are scared of, and we learn more about that, and I thought that aspect was really cool. I really enjoyed the backstory of the Winnowing and her as a character as well, probably my second favorite character, even though she fell a little bit flat for me, but not as much as some of the others. And also Vintage, who is this eccentric a woman in her 40s who is obsessed with the Eighth Reign and the behemoths and all the things that are happening in this particular world. So the world building, the plot, like, it's all there, but some of the execution I didn't love. And that is my experience with the Ninth Reign thus far. I'm looking forward to reading the second book and seeing if that gets better for me. And now that I know the writing style, maybe I can curb my expectations a little bit better. That was my month. What was your favorite read of the month? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give one of those. And if you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will. And I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.